She served the cruelest billionaire every week, but what he did in secret changed everything. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Every Thursday at exactly 7 p.m., the devil himself walked into Meridian's most exclusive restaurant, and tonight it was my turn to serve him. But that was still 6 days away. Right now, Emory Sinclair was finishing her final shift at Romano's, a decent mid-tier place in downtown Seattle where she'd spent the last 18 months perfecting her craft. The Friday night rush was winding down, tables cleared, tips counted. Her phone buzzed. Dylan's name appeared on the screen, and her heart did that little skip it always did when her baby brother called. "Hey, Em!" Dylan's voice carried that mix of excitement and exhaustion she'd grown to recognize during his pre-med years at University of Washington. "Guess what happened today? What happened today?" Emory tucked the phone against her shoulder while wiping down her last table. "Professor Martinez pulled me aside after anatomy class. Said I'm one of the top 3 students this semester." Emory's chest swelled with pride. "Dylan, that's incredible. You're going to be such an amazing doctor, only because my sister works 3 jobs to keep me in school." Dylan's voice softened. "Em, I know what you've given up for me. When Mom and Dad died in that car accident 3 years ago, leaving them with nothing but each other and a mountain of debt." Emory had dropped out of her own college program to support Dylan's dreams. She'd never regretted it, not once. "Don't you dare feel guilty, Dylan Sinclair. You're going to save lives. That's worth everything. Still, when you get married someday, I'm paying for the whole wedding. The biggest, most ridiculous celebration Seattle has ever seen." Emory laughed, but something hollow echoed in her chest. Marriage felt like a luxury she couldn't afford to think about. Between work and Dylan's needs, she barely had time to date, let alone fall in love. "I have to tell you something," she said, walking to her locker. "I got the Meridian position." The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then Dylan let out a whoop that probably woke half his dorm floor. "Emory, Meridian, that's the most exclusive restaurant in the city. The tips alone. The tips will cover your textbooks next semester without me having to pick up weekend catering gigs. You did it. You actually did it." Dylan's voice cracked slightly. "Mom and Dad would be so proud of you." Emory touched the small photo taped inside her locker door. Her parents at their last anniversary dinner, arms around each other, laughing at some private joke. 3 months later, they were gone. "They'd be proud of both of us," she whispered. After hanging up, Emory stood in the empty restaurant, surrounded by the quiet that comes after a busy service. Tomorrow she'd start at Meridian, where the clientele included tech executives, celebrities, and old Seattle money. Where one table's wine bill could equal her monthly rent, she was ready for the challenge. She'd studied wine regions until her eyes burned, memorized the menu until she could recite every ingredient, practiced service techniques until they felt like breathing. What she wasn't ready for was what her co-worker Maria had whispered during shift change. "Girl, just promise me you won't get assigned to serve Kane on Thursdays. That man has made 3 servers quit in the past 6 months. Whatever you do, avoid the Thursday 7 p.m. reservation." The marble floors of Meridian gleamed under crystal chandeliers as Emory reported for her first shift. Patricia Carlisle, the restaurant manager, conducted the morning briefing with military precision. "We have 212 covers today," Patricia announced to the assembled staff. "The Yamamoto party will require our sake sommelier. Table 12 has a severe shellfish allergy and—" She paused, scanning the room. "Miss Sinclair, a word." Emory followed Patricia to the host station, her stomach tight with first-day nerves. "You come highly recommended from Romano's," Patricia said, "but Meridian operates at a different level entirely. Our clientele expects perfection, not just competence. I understand, Patricia's gaze sharpened. There's one particular challenge I need to discuss. Every Thursday at 7 p.m., we host Mr. Thaddeus Kane, CEO of Kane Global Logistics. Emory recognized the name. Kane Global was one of Seattle's largest shipping companies, worth hundreds of millions. Mr. Kane is particular about his service. Patricia chose her words carefully. He requires our most experienced servers. Unfortunately, we've had some turnover in that section recently. What kind of particular? He notices everything. The water glass placed 2 inches from optimal position. Wine served 1 degree too warm. Conversation lasting 30 seconds longer than necessary. Patricia's expression grew serious. He's never rude, mind you, but he has standards that some find challenging. I can handle challenging. Can you? Patricia studied her. He's requested table 7 for this Thursday. It's in your section. Emory felt that familiar fire kindle in her chest, the same one that had driven her through 3 jobs and night school. The same one that kept her going when everything felt impossible. I'll be ready. Patricia almost smiled. We'll see about that. Thursday arrived with Seattle's typical October rain drumming against Meridian's floor-to-ceiling windows. Emory had spent 3 days studying wine vintages, memorizing the evening specials, and preparing for whatever this Kane person might throw at her. At 6:55 p.m., she stationed herself near table 7. The butterflies in her stomach felt more like pterodactyls. Patricia appeared at her elbow. He's here. Emory looked toward the entrance and felt the air shift. Thaddeus Kane was devastating. 6 feet 2 inches of perfectly tailored charcoal suit, dark hair with distinguished silver at the temples, and eyes the color of winter storms. He moved through the restaurant like he owned not just the table but the entire building, which, for all Emory knew, he might. He approached table 7 with measured steps, not even glancing in her direction as he sat down. No acknowledgement of her presence, no greeting. Patricia had vanished, leaving Emory alone with Seattle's most demanding customer. Emory approached with the confidence she'd spent 3 days building. Good evening, Mr. Kane. Welcome to Meridian. I'm Emory, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Those storm-gray eyes lifted to meet hers. His expression revealed nothing. Water. Still. No ice. Lemon on the side. Of course. And would you like to hear about tonight's wine pairings? I'll review the list myself. His voice was precisely controlled, each word measured and delivered without unnecessary warmth. Emory had heard voices like this before, but never one that seemed to wrap around her spine and squeeze. She brought the water, placing it exactly where etiquette demanded. Thaddeus Kane's gaze swept the table setting with the intensity of a quality control inspector. The knife is positioned incorrectly. Emory looked down. The knife sat exactly where she'd placed it, exactly where it should be, according to every service manual she'd ever studied. I arranged everything according to Meridian's standards. Mr. Kane, if you'd prefer a different placement, I'd be happy to adjust it, but I assure you it's correct. Something flickered across his expression. Surprise. Maybe. Most people apologize before I even speak. Emory met his gaze steadily. Most people assume they've done something wrong, Mr. Kane. I don't. For the first time since he'd entered the restaurant, Thaddeus Kane looked at her, really looked at her. The intensity of his attention felt like standing too close to a fire. Bring me the 2018 Barolo and tell me what you know about the region. It was a test. Obviously, the 2018 Barolo was one of the most expensive wines on their list, and Piedmont was notoriously complex. The 2018 vintage was exceptional in Piedmont, Emory said without hesitation. Cool spring followed by a warm, dry summer. Perfect conditions for Nebbiolo grapes. The wine shows classic Barolo character, roses, tar, earth, but with more approachable tannins than usual for the region. Thaddeus Kane's eyes narrowed. Where did you learn that? I read everything I can about wine. Emory didn't mention staying up until 2 a.m. for 3 nights running, cramming wine knowledge like a medical student before boards. Knowledge is respect, Mr. Kane. For the wine, for the guest, for the craft. Something shifted in his expression, though she couldn't quite identify what. When she returned with the Barolo, executing the opening and tasting ritual with practiced precision, he nodded once. Approval, perhaps. The rest of the service passed in careful dance. He ordered the beef tenderloin, medium rare. She anticipated his needs without hovering, refilled his water glass before it emptied, cleared courses at exactly the right moment. No conversation beyond necessity, no warmth beyond professionalism. When he finished, she presented the check. $412 for one person's dinner. The credit card he handed her was black, heavy, and bore only his name in silver letters. "Will there be anything else, Mr. Kane?" "No." He signed the receipt, stood, and walked toward the exit without another word. Emory looked down at the signed receipt and nearly dropped it. The tip line showed $206, exactly 50%. Patricia materialized beside her. How did it go? Emory held up the receipt wordlessly. Patricia's eyebrows shot toward her hairline. "He's never tipped more than exactly 20%. Ever. Why would he?" "I have absolutely no idea," Patricia said. "But whatever you did, do it again next Thursday." Wednesday night found Emory at Elliott Bay Book Company, surrounded by wine guides and regional atlases. If Thaddeus Kane was going to test her again, and she was certain he would, she'd be ready. The Piedmont section alone contained more information than most people learned in sommelier courses. She made notes about soil composition, elevation, climate patterns, and the subtle differences between Barolo and Barbaresco. "Excuse me." The voice came from directly behind her, deep, familiar, and entirely unexpected. Emory turned and found herself looking up into storm-grey eyes. "Mr. Kane." Her heart performed some complicated gymnastics routine in her chest. "This is unexpected." Thaddeus Kane stood there in perfectly pressed khakis and a navy sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Casual wear that somehow made him more intimidating, not less. "You're researching wine regions." It wasn't a question. "Yes." Emory gestured at the books surrounding her small table. "I like to be prepared." "For what?" "For whatever you might ask me tomorrow night." The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Almost. You expect me to test you again. I expect you to challenge me. You don't seem like someone who accepts anything less than excellence." Thaddeus Kane studied her for a long moment. The bookstore bustled around them, people browsing, conversations flowing, the espresso machine hissing. But Emory felt like they existed in their own bubble of tension. "What do you know about Brunello di Montalcino?" Another test. Here, in a bookstore, on her own time. Sangiovese grapes grown in specific vineyards around the town of Montalcino. Minimum 5 years aging before release, with at least 2 years in oak. The wines are powerful, structured, meant for decades of aging. And the 2016 vintage, exceptional year, cool nights, warm days, perfect harvest conditions. The wines show remarkable balance between power and elegance. Thaddeus Kane's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. Approval, interest. Emory couldn't tell. "You've done your homework." "I always do my homework, Mr. Kane." He looked down at the books scattered across her table. Italian wine regions, French appellations, a detailed atlas of Burgundy. Why? The question caught her off guard. Why what? Why do you care this much? You could serve wine without understanding terroir. Most servers do. Emory considered her answer carefully. Because excellence isn't about getting by, it's about understanding why something matters. When I serve a wine, I want to honor the generations of winemakers who perfected their craft. I want to respect the guest who's chosen to invest in that experience. And you want to prove you belong here. It wasn't a question, and his directness surprised her. Yes, she said simply, I want to prove I belong here. Thaddeus Kane nodded once, as if her honesty confirmed something he'd suspected. I'll see you tomorrow evening, Miss Sinclair. He turned and walked away, leaving Emory surrounded by wine books and the lingering scent of expensive cologne. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dylan. How's the studying going? Don't stress too much about tomorrow. You've got this. Emory smiled, typing back, always, but I think tomorrow might be interesting. She had no idea how interesting. Thursday arrived with clear skies and the kind of autumn light that made Seattle look like a postcard. Emory arrived at Meridian 2 hours early, double-checking everything, reviewing her notes one final time. At 6:30, Patricia found her arranging table 7 with obsessive precision. You seem nervous. Excited, Emory corrected. Ready. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Most servers who've dealt with Kane twice describe themselves as terrified. I'm not most servers. No, Patricia agreed, studying her with new interest. I don't think you are. At exactly 7 p.m., Thaddeus Kane entered Meridian. This time, when he approached table 7, his eyes sought Emory's immediately. Good evening, Mr. Kane, Miss Sinclair. His formal tone hadn't changed, but something underneath felt different, warmer, maybe. Would you like to start with the Brunello this evening? Surprise flickered across his features. You remember? I remember everything, Mr. Kane. For the first time in 2 weeks of service, Thaddeus Kane almost smiled. The evening unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. He ordered dishes that paired perfectly with the Brunello, asking subtle questions about preparation methods and ingredient sources. Emory answered each one, but found herself asking questions in return. Have you been to Montalcino yourself? Once. 5 years ago. His voice carried an unexpected note of longing. The vineyards in September are unlike anything else in the world. I've always wanted to travel to wine regions. Emory surprised herself by admitting this. To understand how place shapes flavor, terroir, he said, the French concept that wine expresses the soul of its place. You speak French, among other languages. Business requires adaptability, but you love wine for its own sake. Again, not a question. Thaddeus Kane studied her with those winter storm eyes. Yes, he said quietly, I do. The conversation continued throughout the meal, professional boundaries blurring into something more personal. When Emory brought dessert, a chocolate tart that paired beautifully with the wine's dark fruit notes, Thaddeus Kane did something unprecedented. He smiled. Actually smiled. Excellent choice, Miss Sinclair. Thank you, Mr. Kane. When he left that night, the tip was even larger than the week before, but more importantly, he'd looked back once before exiting the restaurant. Emory went home that night and lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of their conversation, the way his voice had softened when he talked about Montalcino, the way he'd listened to her answers like they actually mattered, the way she'd felt when he smiled. Across town, in a penthouse overlooking Elliott Bay, Thaddeus Kane stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of that same Brunello in his hand, thinking about auburn hair and warm brown eyes, and a voice that said, I always do my homework. Like it was a promise. For the first time in 2 years, Thursday couldn't come fast enough. The week between Thursday dinners stretched like an eternity. Emory found herself checking her appearance in every reflective surface, wondering what Thaddeus Kane thought when he looked at her, wondering why she cared what he thought. Tuesday morning brought a call from Dylan during her break between shifts. You sound different lately. Different how? Emory balanced the phone against her shoulder while reviewing inventory lists. Happier. Like, I don't know. Like you're excited about something. I love my job at Meridian. It's more than that. Dylan's voice carried that note of protective concern she'd heard since their parents died. "Are you seeing someone?" Emory nearly dropped her clipboard. "What? No. Dylan, I don't have time to date anyone. Maybe you should make time." "With what money? With what energy?" Emory immediately regretted the sharpness in her voice. "I'm sorry. My focus needs to be on work, on your school." Dylan's voice went gentle. "You know Mom and Dad wouldn't want you to sacrifice your whole life for me, right?" The question hit harder than expected. Their parents had been crazy in love even after 23 years of marriage. They'd modeled partnership, romance, the kind of love that made ordinary moments feel magical. "I know," Emory whispered, "but right now, this is what I choose." "Okay, but promise me you'll recognize happiness if it shows up." Happiness felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. But she promised anyway. Wednesday evening found Emory at her laptop, supposedly updating her resume, but actually Googling Thaddeus Kane, Seattle. The search results were frustratingly corporate: business acquisitions, charity board appointments, industry awards, nothing personal. No mention of family, relationships, interests beyond professional success. One photo accompanied a Forbes article about Seattle's most influential CEOs. Thaddeus, in a perfectly tailored tuxedo at some gala, standing alone while other attendees clustered in groups around him. His expression was the same controlled mask she knew from the restaurant, but something about his posture suggested loneliness. Emory closed the laptop, disturbed by how much she wanted to know more. Thursday arrived with October rain and Emory's mounting anticipation. She arrived early, prepared table 7 with extra attention to detail, and tried to convince herself the flutter in her stomach was professional nervousness. At 7 p.m. exactly, Thaddeus Kane walked through Meridian's entrance. This time, his eyes found her immediately, and something that might have been relief crossed his features. "Miss Sinclair. Mr. Kane, welcome back." When she approached his table, she noticed subtle changes. His tie was slightly loosened. His shoulders seemed less rigidly set, still intimidating, still commanding, but somehow more human. "The usual wine this evening, actually," he said, and his voice carried an unexpected note of uncertainty. "I was hoping you might recommend something you'd choose for yourself." The request caught her completely off guard. In 3 weeks of service, he'd never asked for her opinion on anything personal. "For myself," she repeated. "If price weren't a consideration, if you were celebrating something important, what would you choose?" Emory considered carefully. The question felt like another test, but a different kind. More personal, more revealing. "The 2015 Chambertin," she said finally. "It's complex, layers that reveal themselves slowly, powerful but elegant. The kind of wine that makes you understand why people fall in love with Burgundy." Thaddeus Kane studied her for a long moment. "And what would you be celebrating?" The question was definitely personal now. Emory felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Independence," she said honestly, "the ability to make choices based on what I want, not just what I need." Something shifted in his expression. "Understanding, maybe. Bring us the Chambertin," he said quietly. "Us?" Emory blinked. "Mr. Kane, I'm working. I can't." "You're due for a break in 20 minutes. Patricia confirmed it." He'd spoken to Patricia about her break schedule. "I don't understand." He looked down at his hands, and for the first time since she'd known him, Thaddeus Kane seemed uncertain. "I find myself curious about your perspective on wine." As someone who studies it with such dedication, he looked up, meeting her eyes. "Would you join me for a glass, professionally speaking?" Professionally speaking was probably the most transparent lie either of them had ever told, but Emory found herself nodding. 20 minutes later, she sat across from Thaddeus Kane at table 7 with a glass of wine that cost more than her weekly salary. The restaurant hummed around them, but somehow felt distant, unimportant. "Tell me about the wine," he said. Emory swirled the deep red liquid, inhaling its complex bouquet. It's like listening to a symphony. Different notes at different moments, earth and fruit and something almost floral, but deeper. You have a poet's palate. I have a student's palate. There's a difference. Thaddeus Kane sipped his wine, considering, why wine? Why not become a sommelier yourself instead of serving it? The question touched on dreams she'd buried so deep she'd almost forgotten them. Time, she said simply. Money. Circumstance. All things that can change. Not for everyone. His grey eyes searched her face. You're supporting someone. My brother, he's pre-med at UW. Emory surprised herself by sharing this. Our parents died 3 years ago. Dylan's brilliant. He's going to be an incredible doctor. That's worth more than my own plans. And what were your own plans? The wine had loosened her tongue, or maybe it was the way he listened like her answer actually mattered. Culinary school, originally. Maybe work in food and wine journalism. Travel to wine regions. Write about the connection between place and flavor. Dreams worth returning to? Someday. Someday feels very far away. Thaddeus Kane set down his wine glass, his expression serious. May I ask you something personal, Miss Sinclair? Emory nodded, though her heart rate picked up significantly. Are you happy? The question was so unexpected, so direct, that Emory couldn't formulate a diplomatic answer. I'm content, she said finally. I'm proud of what I'm building, but happy. I'm not sure I remember what that feels like. I understand that feeling. There was something in his voice, vulnerability maybe, that made her look at him more closely. Really look at him. Are you happy, Mr. Kane? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. I'm successful, he said finally. I'm respected. I've built something that matters. But happiness? He met her eyes. I'm not sure I remember either. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of that mutual admission settling between them. Maybe that's why I keep coming back here, he said quietly. To Meridian. To your table. His voice was barely above a whisper. You make me remember what it feels like to want something more than success. Emory's breath caught. The air between them felt charged, electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. Mr. Kane. Thaddeus, he said. When we're talking like this, when you're not working, call me Thaddeus. Thaddeus. His name felt strange on her tongue. Intimate. Their eyes met across the table, and Emory felt something shift inside her chest, something that had been locked away for 3 years, protected behind walls of responsibility and sacrifice. Something that felt dangerously like hope. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility and risk, until Patricia appeared at their table. Miss Sinclair, your break is over. Reality crashed back. The restaurant, the other diners, the fact that she was sharing wine with a customer during her shift. Emory stood quickly, perhaps too quickly. Thank you for the wine, Mr. Kane. Thaddeus. It was educational. Yes, he said, standing as well. Educational. But his eyes said something entirely different. When she brought his check an hour later, the tip was the largest yet. But more importantly, he'd written something on the receipt. Thank you for an enlightening evening, Sanctende. Emory went home that night and called Dylan. Hey, Em, you sound different again. Dylan, she said without preamble. What would you say if I told you I was thinking about someone? I'd say it's about time. Dylan's voice was warm with approval. Tell me about him. Emory lay back on her bed, staring at the ceiling. He's complicated. Good complicated or bad complicated? I have no idea, she admitted. But Dylan? Yeah, I think I might be happy. The call came at 4:30 p.m. on Tuesday, 30 minutes before Emory's shift at Meridian. Dylan's name flashed on her screen, and she answered while adjusting her uniform in the staff bathroom mirror. I have a problem. Dylan's voice carried that familiar note of guilt that always preceded requests for money. Emory's stomach tightened as she studied her reflection. Dark circles shadowed her brown eyes, evidence of too many late nights studying wine regions and working double shifts since starting at Meridian. "What kind of problem?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would involve money they didn't have. "The bookstore made a mistake with my textbook order. I need an additional $800 for the required anatomy atlas and lab manual set. It's mandatory for next semester's surgical rotation applications." Emory closed her eyes, mentally calculating her savings. The Meridian tips had been generous, especially from Thaddeus, but $800 would wipe out her emergency fund completely. The fund she'd been building to cover Dylan's spring semester fees. When do you need it? Tomorrow. The deadline for course materials is Friday, and if I don't have everything by then, I can't register for the advanced courses. Emmy, without those courses, I won't qualify for surgical rotation applications next year. The weight of that statement settled heavily between them. Dylan's entire medical career trajectory depended on maintaining his academic momentum. One missed semester could delay his graduation by an entire year, adding thousands more in tuition costs they couldn't afford. Dylan, "I'll figure it out. Maybe I could take out another student loan. The interest rates aren't terrible." And, "Absolutely not." Emory's voice was firm. "You're already going to graduate with enough debt to buy a house. Let me handle this." "How?" Dylan's voice cracked slightly, revealing the 19-year-old beneath his mature facade. "You're already working yourself to death for me. I see how tired you sound every time we talk. I said I'll handle it. Dylan, trust me." The words came out sharper than she intended, and she immediately regretted the tone. Dylan was carrying his own weight in this equation, maintaining a 4.0 GPA while working part-time in the university lab. "I'm sorry," she said more gently. "I know you're doing everything you can on your end. Let me worry about the money." "Emory, are you sure? Because if this is too much—" "Don't you dare finish that sentence. Dylan Sinclair, you're going to be an incredible doctor someday. That's worth every sacrifice." After hanging up, Emory stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, 26 years old, supporting her brilliant little brother through medical school, working at Seattle's most prestigious restaurant, and somehow still feeling like she was drowning in responsibilities. $800. In her old life, before their parents' accident, that amount would have been manageable. Now it felt simultaneously achievable and impossible. She splashed cold water on her face, straightened her shoulders, and walked onto Meridian's gleaming floor. Whatever happened tonight, she'd maintain her professional standards, especially with Thaddeus arriving in 2.5 hours. The early dinner service passed in a blur of wine pairings and elaborate presentations. Emory moved through the familiar rhythm of service, but Dylan's call had shaken her concentration more than she wanted to admit. She fumbled a wine pour at table 4, nearly dropped a plate of Pacific Northwest salmon at table 6. "Focus, Sinclair," she whispered to herself while polishing wine glasses in the service station. "You can't afford mistakes tonight." Patricia Carlyle appeared beside her at 6:45, carrying the evening's reservation updates. "Kane just called. He'll be 15 minutes late tonight. Something about a board meeting running over." Emory's heart performed some complicated gymnastics routine in her chest. Relief mixed with disappointment, mixed with nervous anticipation. After last week's wine sharing and increasingly personal conversations, she wasn't sure how to navigate their evolving dynamic. "Thank you for letting me know." Patricia studied her expression with managerial concern. "You seem distracted tonight, Miss Sinclair. Family situation. Nothing that will affect my service quality." Patricia's expression softened slightly. "I hope that's true. Kane has specifically requested your section for the past month. Losing his business would be unfortunate." The implication was clear. Thaddeus Kane represented significant revenue for Meridian, and Emory's position depended on maintaining his satisfaction. Understood. At 7:15, Thaddeus Kane entered Meridian with his usual commanding presence. Tonight, he wore a navy suit that made his grey eyes look like storm clouds gathering over Elliott Bay. When those eyes found her across the restaurant, something electric shot through her chest. He approached table 7 with measured steps, but something in his posture seemed different tonight, less rigidly controlled, more human somehow. "Good evening, Thaddeus." Using his first name had become natural over the past month, intimate in a way that should have worried her but didn't. Emory, his voice carried warmth that hadn't existed when they'd first met. "You look tired tonight." The observation caught her completely off guard. In all their weeks of professional interaction, he'd never made such a personal comment about her appearance. "Long day," she said simply, falling back on neutral professionalism. Thaddeus Kane studied her face with an intensity that made her feel exposed, seen in a way that had nothing to do with their server-customer relationship. "Would you like to start with wine this evening?" she asked, trying to regain her professional footing. "Actually," he said, leaning back in his chair, "I'd like to start with honesty." Emory blinked, her prepared wine recommendations dissolving on her tongue. "Honesty about what? About whatever's troubling you tonight?" The question was so direct, so unexpectedly personal, that Emory's carefully constructed professional facade began to crack. When was the last time someone had asked about her well-being? Really asked, not just polite conversation. "I'm sorry if my mood is affecting my service." "It's not affecting your service." Thaddeus's voice went gentle, concerned. "But you matter to me, Emory. If something's wrong, I'd like to know. You matter to me." The words hit her like physical force, settling somewhere deep in her chest where she'd buried most of her emotional needs 3 years ago. "It's nothing dramatic," she heard herself saying, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "Just family obligations, financial pressure, the usual challenges of supporting someone else's dreams while putting your own on indefinite hold." Thaddeus Kane nodded slowly, understanding flickering in his grey eyes, like he recognized the weight she was describing. "How old is your brother?" he asked quietly. 19. Pre-med at University of Washington. "He's brilliant, truly gifted. He's going to save lives someday. And you're sacrificing everything to make that possible." It wasn't a question, more like a statement of recognition. Emory felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I'm not sacrificing anything," she said defensively. "I'm investing in something that matters more than my own comfort. Your dreams matter too." The quiet conviction in his voice made her chest tight with unexpected emotion. Right now, his dreams are my dreams. They have to be. Thaddeus Kane was silent for a long moment, his expression thoughtful as he studied her face. "When I was 26, he said finally, my father's company was on the verge of bankruptcy. Bad investments, worse management decisions, and a recession that hit the shipping industry particularly hard." Emory found herself leaning forward slightly, surprised by this personal revelation. "I had my own plans then. Graduate school at Oxford, maybe a career in academia. I'd always been fascinated by economic theory, the way markets respond to social pressures. What happened? I spent 3 years rebuilding Kane Logistics from near collapse. 16-hour days, learning every aspect of the business, making decisions that affected hundreds of employees' livelihoods. Do you regret it? The question slipped out before she could consider whether it was appropriate. No. Thaddeus met her eyes directly. But I learned something important during those years that I wish someone had told me sooner. What? That carrying someone else's burden doesn't make you noble unless you're also honoring your own worth. The words settled between them like a gentle challenge, forcing Emory to examine assumptions she'd held for 3 years. My worth is helping Dylan succeed, she said, but the conviction in her voice wavered slightly. Your worth, Thaddeus said quietly, is everything you are, Your intelligence, your dedication, your incredible capacity for caring about things deeply. Dylan is fortunate to have your support, but you deserve support too. No one had talked to her like this in 3 years. No one had seen her as anything beyond Dylan's older sister, the responsible one, the one who handled everything without complaint. "I don't need support," she whispered, the words feeling false even as she spoke them. "Everyone needs support, Emory. Even you. Especially you." The gentleness in his voice nearly undid her completely. She looked down at her hands, fighting the urge to cry in the middle of Meridian's elegant dining room. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked without looking up. "Because," Thaddeus said, reaching across the table to touch her hand briefly, "you've been carrying everyone else's weight for so long. I don't think you remember what it feels like to let someone care about you." His touch lasted only seconds, but Emory felt it like electricity shooting up her arm and settling somewhere near her heart. "Thaddeus, let me help with whatever financial pressure you're facing." The offer was immediate, generous, and completely impossible. Emory pulled her hand back as if his touch had burned her. "I can't accept money from you." "Why not?" Because we're not." Emory struggled for words that wouldn't reveal how much his offer meant to her. "Because it wouldn't be appropriate." Appropriate according to whom? According to every boundary between customer and server. According to the massive gap between your world and mine. According to the fact that I barely know you. Even as she said it, Emory knew it wasn't entirely true. She did know him, in ways that felt deeper than their brief acquaintance should allow. "You know me," Thaddeus said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "Maybe better than most people do." The truth of that statement hit her like a physical blow. She knew he loved wine for its artistry, not its prestige. She knew he was lonely beneath his professional success. She knew he listened to her opinions like they actually mattered. She knew the way he smiled made her forget how to breathe properly. "I can't take money from you," she repeated, but her voice lacked conviction. "Then let me take you to dinner, somewhere away from Meridian, away from service protocols and professional boundaries. Let me get to know the Emory who dreams about traveling to wine regions and writing about the connection between place and flavor." Emory's heart hammered against her ribs. He was asking her on a date, an actual, deliberate date. "I'm working," she said weakly. "Tomorrow night, Wednesday, is your day off." "How do you know when my day off is?" I asked Patricia. Of course he had. The idea of Thaddeus Kane asking their manager about her schedule felt surreal and thrilling and terrifying all at once. "Thaddeus, I don't think," he said, his grey eyes intense. "Just say yes." Emory looked into those storm-colored eyes and saw something that made her chest tight with want and fear and hope all tangled together. "Yes," she whispered. His smile could have powered the entire restaurant. The rest of the evening passed in a haze of professional service and personal anticipation. When she brought his dinner, perfectly prepared beef tenderloin paired with a Bordeaux he'd selected specifically for its complexity, they talked about everything except tomorrow's date. Books, travel destinations, the way October light changed throughout the month in Seattle. Normal conversation between two people who were attracted to each other and tired of pretending otherwise. When he left that night, the tip was generous, but not excessive. Professional, appropriate. But the note he wrote on the receipt wasn't professional at all. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m. I'll pick you up. Wear whatever makes you feel beautiful." Emory went home to her small studio apartment and stood in her closet for an hour, staring at her limited wardrobe and wondering what made her feel beautiful. Everything, she realized, when she imagined Thaddeus Kane looking at her the way he had tonight. Emory changed outfits 4 times before settling on a simple black dress she'd bought for her parents' memorial service 3 years ago. It was the only formal dress she owned, and despite its somber associations, it fit perfectly and made her auburn hair look rich under warm light. At exactly 7 p.m., her apartment buzzer rang. She took one last look in the mirror, grabbed her purse, and headed downstairs to what felt like the beginning of something that could change everything. Thaddeus Kane stood in her building's modest lobby, wearing dark jeans, a charcoal cashmere sweater, and an expression of nervous anticipation that made him look younger, more approachable than she'd ever seen him. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you. You look comfortable." He laughed, a sound she'd never heard from him before. Warm, genuine, completely unguarded. "I wanted to look like myself tonight, not the CEO version. This was definitely not the CEO version. This Thaddeus Kane looked like someone she could talk to for hours. Someone who might laugh at her jokes and share stories about his childhood. Someone she could easily fall in love with if she wasn't careful. "Where are we going?" she asked as he opened the passenger door of his sleek black Tesla. "Somewhere we can actually talk, without wine service protocols getting in the way." He drove them through Seattle's early evening traffic to a small bistro in Ballard, the kind of place with mismatched vintage chairs and candles stuck in old wine bottles. Nothing like Meridian's polished elegance, completely perfect for a real conversation. They were seated at a corner table where string lights cast warm shadows across the checkered tablecloth, intimate without being presumptuous, cozy enough for honest conversation. "This is lovely," Emory said, settling into her chair and looking around at the eclectic decor. "I thought you might prefer atmosphere over prestige," Thaddeus replied, studying her face in the candlelight. "You thought correctly." The waitress approached, a college-aged girl with purple hair and a friendly smile. Thaddeus deferred to Emory for wine selection, watching with obvious interest as she studied the modest but well-curated list. She chose a Washington State Syrah, something local and unpretentious that would pair well with the bistro's rustic menu. "Tell me about your parents," Thaddeus said once they'd ordered and the wine had been poured. The request was gentle but direct. Emory traced the rim of her wineglass, considering how much to share, how much vulnerability she could handle in one evening. "They were happy," she said finally. "Really, genuinely happy together. Even after 23 years of marriage, they still held hands during movies and left each other little notes in lunch bags. You miss that example. I miss believing that kind of love exists for everyone, that it's not just something that happens to other people. It does exist." "How do you know?" "Because I'm sitting across from someone who's capable of that kind of love. Someone who spent 3 years putting her brother's dreams before her own comfort. Someone who studies wine regions until 2 a.m. because she wants to honor the craft." Emory's cheeks flushed. "You don't know me well enough to make that assessment. I know you defend your professional standards against impossible customers. I know you light up when you talk about terroir and sustainable farming practices. I know you carry your family's weight without complaint or self-pity. Those are just responsibilities. Anyone would do the same." "No," Thaddeus said firmly, "those are choices. You choose excellence every day. You choose loyalty. You choose to care about things deeply, even when it would be easier not to." The conviction in his voice made her chest tight with emotion she wasn't sure how to handle. "What about you?" she asked, deflecting attention from herself. "Tell me about your family, about the choices that made you who you are." Thaddeus was quiet for a moment, swirling his wine thoughtfully. "My parents divorced when I was 12. Bitter, complicated, lots of lawyers and accusations and children caught in the middle. I spent high school shuttling between houses, feeling responsible for everyone's happiness and failing to achieve it. Is that why you rebuilt your father's company instead of pursuing graduate school?" "Partly. Also because I couldn't stand watching something good be destroyed by poor decisions and wounded pride, like your parents' marriage, like my parents' marriage." They shared a moment of understanding, both recognizing the weight of family responsibility, the way circumstances could reshape entire life trajectories. "Do you ever wonder," Emory asked carefully, What you might have chosen if circumstances were different all the time. Thaddeus met her eyes. Do you, every day, what would you choose? If money wasn't a consideration, if Dylan was settled and successful? Emory considered the question seriously, allowing herself to voice dreams she'd buried so deep she'd almost forgotten them. I'd study wine and food in Italy. Tuscany, maybe Piedmont. Write about regional cuisines and family traditions that have been passed down for generations. Maybe start a blog about sustainable food practices and the way traditional farming methods preserve both flavor and environment. That sounds perfect for you. What about you? If you weren't managing a shipping empire, I'd probably teach, Thaddeus said without hesitation. Literature, maybe philosophy, something that involves long conversations about complex ideas with people who care about learning. You'd be wonderful at that. How do you know? Because you listen like every word matters. Because you ask questions that make people think deeper about their own assumptions. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Thaddeus smiled ruefully. Two people who chose duty over dreams and convinced ourselves it was nobility. Maybe, Emory said softly, but dreams don't have expiration dates. No, he agreed, his grey eyes intense. They don't. The conversation continued over dinner. Roasted chicken with fresh herbs, pasta with local mushrooms, simple food that let them focus on each other instead of elaborate presentations. Thaddeus told her about his favorite books, his secret love of old movies, the way he'd taught himself to cook during lonely evenings in his penthouse overlooking the bay. Emory shared stories about Dylan's childhood, her parents' garden where they'd grown vegetables and herbs, the tiny apartment where she'd learned to make magic from limited ingredients and endless creativity. Normal conversation between two people getting to know each other. Except nothing about their situation felt normal. The attraction between them was palpable, electric, threading through every exchange. After dinner, they walked along the waterfront under October stars. Seattle's skyline glittered across Elliott Bay, and the sound of water against pilings created a rhythm that matched Emory's accelerated heartbeat. "Thank you for tonight," she said as they paused at a bench overlooking the bay. "Thank you for saying yes." They stood closer than friendship required, further apart than courage allowed. The space between them hummed with possibility and the kind of tension that made breathing difficult. "Emory," Thaddeus said quietly. "Yes, I need you to know something." Her heart stopped. "What? This isn't casual for me. Whatever this is between us, I haven't felt anything like this in years." The honesty in his voice made her chest tight with want and fear, and something that might have been love. "I haven't felt anything like this ever," she admitted. Thaddeus stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the flecks of silver in his grey eyes, feel the warmth radiating from his body. "May I kiss you?" The question was soft, respectful, giving her every opportunity to step away if she needed to. Emory didn't need to step away. "Yes," she whispered. He kissed her gently at first, a soft press of lips that tasted like wine and possibility, then deeper, with a hunger that matched her own desperate need for connection. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Oh," Emory whispered. "Oh," Thaddeus agreed. They stood there for a long moment, foreheads touching, both aware that everything had just changed between them in ways that couldn't be undone. "I should take you home," he said reluctantly. "You should," but neither of them moved. Finally, Thaddeus stepped back, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that was entirely human and vulnerable. "If we continue this, when," he corrected. "When we continue this, I want you to know what you're getting into." What am I getting into? Someone who hasn't been in a serious relationship in 2 years. Someone who works too much and trusts too little. Someone who's afraid of messing this up because it matters too much. Emory reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "What are you getting into?" she asked. "Someone who's never put her own happiness first. Someone who doesn't know how to accept help or let people take care of her. Someone who's afraid of wanting something she might not be able to keep. Thaddeus covered her hand with his own. "We're quite a pair," he said, echoing her earlier words. "Quite a pair," she agreed. He drove her home in comfortable silence, both lost in thought about what they'd started and where it might lead. When he walked her to her apartment door, the goodbye kiss was sweet, tender, full of promise. "I'll see you Thursday," he said. "You'll see me Thursday." But as Emory watched him drive away, she couldn't shake the feeling that something this good was too fragile to last. The call came from Cameron Torres at 10:30 a.m. on Wednesday, interrupting Thaddeus's quarterly budget meeting with Kane Global's senior management team. His assistant knocked and entered the conference room with apologetic urgency. "Mr. Kane, Cameron Torres is on line 1. He says it's urgent and personal." Thaddeus felt his stomach tighten with worry. Cameron never called during business hours unless something was seriously wrong. "Excuse me, gentlemen, we'll resume in 20 minutes. He took the call in his private office. Seattle's skyline stretched out behind his desk. "What's happened?" "Thad, we need to talk. In person. Can you meet me at Pike Place in 20 minutes? Cameron's voice carried an edge Thaddeus hadn't heard since their college days, when his friend had helped him through his parents' bitter divorce proceedings. "I'm in the middle of quarterly reviews. This can't wait." The urgency in Cameron's tone was unmistakable. "I'll be there." Thaddeus found Cameron at their usual coffee stand near the fish market, 2 cups of dark roast already waiting. His oldest friend looked tired, stressed, and uncharacteristically serious. "What's going on?" Thaddeus asked, settling onto the wooden stool beside Cameron. "Sit down first." "I am sitting down." "Cameron, just tell me. Vivian called me last night." The name hit Thaddeus like ice water thrown in his face. Vivian Clark, his ex-fiancée, the woman who'd nearly destroyed his company and definitely destroyed his ability to trust anyone completely. What did she want? "To warn me about you." Cameron's expression was grim. "She's heard rumors that you're seeing someone new. How could she possibly—" "You took a woman to Cafe Campaign last night. Someone saw you, recognized you, posted about it on social media with location tags. You know how Seattle's social scene works. Everyone knows everyone's business." Thaddeus closed his eyes. He'd been careful to choose a low-key restaurant in Ballard, but in a city this size, complete anonymity was impossible for someone in his position. "What exactly did Vivian say?" "That you're making the same mistake again, getting involved with someone from a different social class. Someone who might use your feelings against you for financial gain. And you called me because I wanted to hear your side before jumping to conclusions." Cameron studied his face carefully. "Who is she, Thad?" "Her name is Emory Sinclair. She works at Meridian as what? Server, wine service specialist." Cameron was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "That's potentially complicated." "I know how it looks. Do you? Because from the outside, this looks like a billionaire CEO having a midlife crisis with the restaurant staff." "She's not restaurant staff," Thaddeus said sharply. "She's intelligent, educated, hard-working. She's supporting her brother through medical school while building her own career in hospitality. I'm sure she's lovely," Cameron said carefully. "But Thad, you have to consider the optics. The power imbalance. The potential for misunderstanding or manipulation. You think she's like Vivian. I'm not saying that. But Vivian wasn't exactly a gold digger either. She was successful, well-educated, from a respected family, and she still used your feelings to steal business secrets and nearly bankrupted your company. Emory isn't Vivian. How do you know for certain? Because I know her." Thaddeus's voice grew fierce. "She wouldn't accept money from me to help with a family crisis. She researches wine regions on her own time because she cares about excellence, not because it impresses wealthy customers. She's honest about her struggles without asking for sympathy or financial assistance." Cameron sighed deeply. I want you to be happy, Thad. You know that. But I also watched you rebuild yourself after Vivian's betrayal. I can't stand by and watch you get hurt again. This is different. It always feels different when you're in the middle of it. Thaddeus stared out at Elliot Bay, his chest tight with frustration and growing doubt. Cameron's concerns weren't entirely unreasonable. The power imbalance was real. The social differences were significant. But Emory was real too. Her laugh, her intelligence, the way she'd looked at him last night like he was worth knowing for himself, not his bank account. I'm not going to stop seeing her, he said finally. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to be careful. Take it slow. Make sure you know who she really is before you fall completely in love with her. Too late, Thaddeus thought but didn't say. Meanwhile, across town, Emory was having her own crisis of confidence. She'd arrived at Meridian 3 hours before her shift, hoping to lose herself in prep work and inventory management. Instead, she'd spent the morning Googling Thaddeus Kane girlfriend and discovering exactly how wealthy and powerful her dinner date really was. Forbes estimated his net worth at $800 million. $800 million. The number was so large it felt abstract, meaningless, like something that applied to fictional characters rather than the man who'd kissed her last night. But the photos weren't meaningless. Red carpet events, charity galas, business conferences, always with beautiful women in designer gowns, socialites, models, fellow executives, women who belonged in his world, women who were nothing like her. Jessamine Chen, her co-worker and closest friend at Meridian, found her in the wine storage room, staring at her phone with an expression of growing panic. What's got you looking like someone cancelled your health insurance? Emory showed her the Forbes article without saying a word. Jessamine's eyebrows shot toward her hairline. Holy. Okay. This is the guy you've been serving on Thursdays. This is the guy who took me to dinner last night. Jessamine sat down heavily on a wine crate. Emory, honey, what are you doing? I have absolutely no idea. Do you like him? I think I'm falling in love with him. The words came out before Emory could stop them, and saying them out loud made them terrifyingly real. And that scares you because look at him, look at his life, look at the women he usually dates. Emory scrolled through more photos on her phone. Vivian Clark at last year's Seattle Art Museum Gala, stunning in emerald silk. Rebecca Morrison at a wine auction, sophisticated and poised. Elena Vasquez at a tech industry fundraiser, brilliant and accomplished. I serve food for a living, Jess. I live in a studio apartment and shop at Target. So, Jessamine's voice was firm, you're also kind, intelligent, hardworking and loyal. If he can't see that, he's an idiot. But what if he can see that and it's not enough? What if this is just temporary entertainment for him? Did it feel temporary last night? Emory thought about the way Thaddeus had kissed her, the honesty in his voice when he'd admitted this wasn't casual for him. No, she said quietly. It felt real. Then maybe it is real. Maybe you should trust that instead of overthinking yourself into misery. Jessamine was right. But doubt had already taken root. By the time Thursday evening arrived, Emory had convinced herself that last night was an aberration, a momentary lapse in judgment from both of them. When Thaddeus arrived at 7 p.m., she was ready to re-establish professional boundaries, to protect herself from wanting something she couldn't have. But then he smiled at her, and all her resolutions crumbled. Good evening, Emory. Good evening, Mr. Kane. His expression shifted immediately at the formal address. Emory, not Mr. Kane. We're past that now. Are we? Emory kept her voice carefully neutral. I've been thinking about last night, and I'm not sure it was appropriate. Appropriate according to whom? According to reality. According to the fact that we come from different worlds. Thaddeus studied her face, understanding dawning in his gray eyes. You've been researching me. It wasn't a question. Yes, she admitted. I have. And what did you discover? That you're worth $800 million, that you date models and executives and socialites, that I don't belong in your world." Thaddeus was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and touched her hand. "What else did you discover that—" "What do you mean? Did you find anything about who I really am? About what I value? What makes me happy? What I dream about when I'm alone?" "No," she said softly. "Just business information, financial reports and social photos, because that's all most people see when they look at me. Success, money, status symbols. You're the first person in years who's seen past that. I don't understand. Last night when we talked about your parents' love story, about dreams deferred and family responsibility, you weren't talking to Thaddeus Kane, CEO. You were talking to me. Just me." Emory felt tears prick her eyes. "I've never felt more like myself than when I'm with you," he said quietly. "Don't let numbers on a web page convince you that what we have isn't real." "But Thaddeus, the differences between us are superficial. Money, social class, professional status, none of that matters when two people understand each other the way we do. Easy to say when you're the one with $800 million. The words came out sharper than she'd intended, and she saw Thaddeus flinch. "You're right," he said after a moment. "It is easy for me to dismiss those differences. But Emory, I've never asked you to change anything about yourself. I've never made you feel less than worthy. You haven't. You've been perfect. Then why are you pulling away? Because I'm scared." Emory's voice broke slightly. "I'm scared of wanting something I can't keep. I'm scared of getting hurt when you realize I'm not enough. Not enough for what? For your world. For your life. For you." Thaddeus stood up, moved around the table, and knelt beside her chair. The gesture was so unexpected, so tender, that several other diners turned to look. "Emory, look at me." She met his eyes, seeing nothing but sincerity and something that might have been love. "You are enough. You're more than enough. You're everything I didn't know I was looking for." Tears spilled over her cheeks. "How can you be sure?" "Because you make me want to be better than I am. Because you see value in things that money can't buy. Because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to hope for something beyond professional success." The words were everything she'd wanted to hear and everything she was afraid to believe. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Neither do I. But I want to figure it out with you." Thaddeus reached up and brushed tears from her cheeks, his touch gentle and sure. "Will you let me try to prove that this is real?" Emory looked into his storm-grey eyes and saw her own fear reflected back, along with a determination that matched her own stubborn streak. "Yes," she whispered. He kissed her then, right there in the middle of Meridian's dining room, in front of curious patrons and gossiping staff. A kiss that tasted like promise and possibility, and the kind of love that might actually last. When they broke apart, both were smiling through tears. "Now," Thaddeus said, settling back into his chair with a grin, "tell me about tonight's wine recommendations. I have some catching up to do." The week that followed felt like living in a beautiful dream that might shatter at any moment. Thaddeus called her every morning before work, their conversations ranging from wine philosophy to childhood memories to dreams about the future. He texted her during lunch breaks with photos of interesting wine articles or funny observations about his business meetings. The flowers started arriving on Monday. Not extravagant arrangements that would create gossip, but thoughtful bouquets with handwritten notes that made her co-workers sigh with envy. "Thinking of you while reading about Tuscan vineyards, to found a book about sustainable food practices, ordered it for you, to counting hours until Thursday, to small gestures that felt enormous in their thoughtfulness, evidence of someone who listened to her interests and cared about her happiness. But the dream couldn't last forever. Tuesday afternoon brought an unexpected visitor to Meridian during the quiet period between lunch and dinner service. Emory was polishing stemware in the main dining room when Patricia approached with an expression of professional concern mixed with curiosity. Miss Sinclair, there's someone here to see you. She says it's personal. Emory turned and felt her blood turn to ice. A woman stood near the host station like she owned the entire restaurant. Tall, elegant, wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than Emory's monthly rent. Blonde hair in a perfect chignon, makeup that belonged in a magazine, posture that screamed old money and private schools. This was definitely not a customer. Miss Sinclair? The woman approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm Vivian Clark. I was hoping we could have a brief conversation. Vivian Clark, Thaddeus's ex-fiancée. Emory's hands tightened around the wine glass she'd been polishing. About what? About Thaddeus. Vivian's voice was cultured, controlled, carrying just enough warmth to seem friendly while maintaining clear authority. I understand you've been seeing each other. That's really not your business. You're absolutely right. Vivian settled into a chair at an empty table without being invited. But I care about Thaddeus, despite our complicated history, and I'm concerned about the position you're putting him in. What position is that? Vivian smiled again, the expression sharp as crystal. The position of being involved with someone whose motivations might be misunderstood by others. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Vivian's voice remained pleasant, but steel entered her tone. You're a server. He's a billionaire. People will talk. They'll assume you're with him for financial reasons. Let them assume whatever they want. But Thaddeus can't afford that kind of speculation. Not again. Again. Vivian's expression grew sympathetic, practiced. He hasn't told you about our engagement, has he? About why it ended? Emory's stomach clenched, but she kept her voice steady. That's between you and Thaddeus. The tabloids had a field day when they discovered I'd shared confidential business information with a competitor. Vivian's voice carried just enough regret to sound genuine. They painted me as a gold digger who'd manipulated poor, naive Thaddeus Kane for corporate secrets. And were you? Of course not. But perception became reality. Thaddeus's reputation suffered. His business relationships became strained. It took him 2 years to rebuild the trust he'd lost. Emory felt sick. Why are you telling me this? Because history has a way of repeating itself. Vivian leaned forward, her expression earnest. The media loves a story about powerful men and the women who might be using them. Your relationship will be scrutinized, analyzed, sensationalized. I'm not using him. I'm sure you're not. But can you handle having your entire life dissected, your financial situation examined, your family's struggles broadcast for entertainment? Emory thought about Dylan, about his medical school applications, about the way gossip could destroy carefully built reputations. What do you want from me? I want you to consider what's best for everyone involved. Vivian stood up, smoothing her skirt with practiced elegance. Thaddeus deserves someone who can match his social standing, someone who won't create complications for his business interests. Someone like you, someone unlike both of us, apparently. Vivian's smile turned rueful. I'm not trying to win him back, Miss Sinclair. I'm trying to protect him from making another mistake that could hurt his career. After Vivian left, Emory stood in the empty restaurant, surrounded by gleaming tables and sparkling glasses, feeling like her entire world had shifted off its axis. That evening, she called in sick for the first time since starting at Meridian. She couldn't face serving other customers, couldn't pretend everything was normal when doubt had taken root in every corner of her mind. Instead, she sat in her tiny apartment, staring at her phone, Thaddeus's contact information glowing on the screen. He deserved to know about Vivian's visit. He deserved honesty about her fears. But when she imagined telling him, imagined seeing disappointment or regret in his grey eyes, her courage failed completely. Thursday arrived grey and drizzly, matching Emory's mood perfectly. She moved through her shift like an automaton, professional but distant, dreading 7 p.m. with every fibre of her being. When Thaddeus arrived, his smile faded the moment he saw her expression. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Everything's fine. Emory, talk to me. What happened?" She looked into his concerned grey eyes and felt her heart break a little. "Your ex-fiancé came to see me yesterday." Thaddeus's expression went perfectly still. "Vivian was here. She wanted to discuss our relationship, to share some concerns about the potential complications." "What kind of complications?" "Media attention, business reputation, the challenges of dating someone from a different social class." Emory delivered the information in a flat, professional tone, as if she were reciting daily specials. "And what did you tell her? That it wasn't her business?" But she made some valid points about things I hadn't considered." Thaddeus leaned back in his chair, his expression growing distant. Such as the fact that you haven't told me about your engagement, about why it ended, about what kind of scrutiny our relationship might bring to both of us." "I should have told you about Vivian," he said quietly. "I was trying to protect you from that history, by keeping secrets, by giving us time to build something real before outside pressure could affect it." Emory felt tears threaten. "Is that what this has been? A test run to see if I could handle your world?" "No." Thaddeus's voice was firm. "This has been me falling in love with you despite my better judgment, despite your better judgment." The words hit her like a physical blow. "That's not what I meant, isn't it?" Emory stood up abruptly. "Maybe Vivian was right. Maybe this is too complicated for both of us. Don't let her poison what we have." "What do we have, Thaddeus? Really? A few dinners, some phone calls, and a kiss that felt like more than it was." "It was more. You know it was more." "Do I? Because right now I feel like I don't know anything." Emory's voice broke on the last word, and she saw something crack in Thaddeus's expression. "Please don't do this," he said quietly. "Don't let fear destroy something beautiful." "I'm not destroying anything. I'm facing reality." Reality according to Vivian Clark. Reality according to every rational thought in my head. And what about your heart? "My heart," Emory said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks, "is a luxury I can't afford." She walked away then, leaving Thaddeus sitting alone at table 7, and didn't look back. But she felt his eyes on her until she disappeared into the kitchen, and the weight of his disappointment followed her home. 3 days passed without contact. 3 days of Emory throwing herself into work, picking up extra shifts, anything to avoid thinking about storm-grey eyes and the way Thaddeus had said her name like it was something precious. Dylan called Thursday afternoon, his voice bright with excitement that felt like salt in her emotional wounds. Guess what? I got into the advanced anatomy seminar. Professor Martinez said my application essay was the best he'd read in 5 years. That's wonderful, Dylan." "I'm so proud of you, but you sound tired. Are you working too much again?" "Just busy. You know how restaurant work can be." Dylan was quiet for a moment. "Are you okay? Really okay? Define okay." What's wrong?" "And don't say nothing because I can hear it in your voice." "Nothing's wrong. Everything's exactly as it should be. That's the least convincing lie you've ever told me." "Despite everything," Emory smiled, "you know me too well. Talk to me, please." Emory curled up on her small couch, looking out at Seattle's grey afternoon sky. "I think I was falling in love with someone inappropriate." Was. Present tense, which makes it worse. Inappropriate how? Wrong social class, wrong economic level, wrong everything about our situations in life. Dylan was quiet for a long moment. "Do you remember what Dad used to say about Mom when he thought we weren't listening?" "Which thing?" "That she was completely wrong for him on paper. Different family background, different education, different plans for the future. I remember, but she was completely right for him in every way that mattered. They had the same values, the same sense of humor, the same capacity for love and loyalty." Dylan, it's not that simple in real life, isn't it? Does he treat you well? Yes. Do you trust him? I thought I did. Do you make each other better people? Emory thought about the way Thaddeus listened to her opinions, the way he'd encouraged her dreams, the way she'd felt when he looked at her. Yes, she whispered. Then maybe the rest is just noise that other people are making. After hanging up, Emory sat in her quiet apartment, wondering if her 19-year-old brother had more wisdom about love than she did. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Cameron Torres, Thaddeus's business partner. Could we meet for coffee? There are things you should know about my friend. Emory stared at the message for 10 minutes before responding. Pike Place Market. 1 hour. Cameron Torres was waiting for her at a small cafe near the fish market, 2 cups of coffee already ordered. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 35, with kind eyes and an easy smile that reminded her of Dylan. "Thank you for coming," he said as she sat down. "I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. Thaddeus doesn't know I'm here." Cameron's expression grew serious. "But I've known him for 15 years, and I've never seen him as miserable as he's been for the past 3 days. Maybe misery will help him realize this was a mistake. Was it a mistake?" The direct question caught her off guard. "I don't know anymore. Can I tell you something about my friend?" Cameron leaned forward. "Thaddeus Kane is the most guarded person I know. He trusts very few people, opens up to even fewer. In the 2 years since Vivian, he hasn't been on a single real date. What's your point?" "My point is that you broke through walls it took him years to build. You made him remember what it feels like to hope for something beyond professional success. And then I hurt him." "Yes, you did, but not intentionally, and not unfixably." Cameron pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos, and showed her the screen. "This was taken at my wedding last month." The photo showed a group of men in tuxedos, laughing at something off camera. Thaddeus stood slightly apart from the group, smiling but somehow separate, alone even in the crowd. He's been alone for a long time. Emory. By choice, mostly, but also because he'd given up believing that real partnership was possible. Until you. Cameron put his phone away. "He told me about your conversation at dinner, about dreams deferred and the weight of family responsibility. He said it was the first time in years he'd talked to someone who understood what it meant to sacrifice personal desires for duty. We have that in common. You have a lot in common, more than social class or bank account balances could ever diminish." Cameron studied her face with keen intelligence. "Vivian came to see you." "Yes." "And she convinced you that Thaddeus would be better off without the complications you'd bring to his life. Something like that. Vivian is brilliant, persuasive, and completely wrong about this." Cameron's voice grew firm. "She's also operating from her own guilt about the damage she caused." "What do you mean?" "She genuinely loved Thaddeus, but she let ambition and outside pressure convince her to betray that love. Now she's projecting her own failures onto your situation. You think I should ignore her warnings. I think you should trust your own judgment. And Thaddeus's—" Emory sipped her coffee, thinking about everything Cameron had said. What if the media attention does hurt his business? What if I'm not strong enough to handle that kind of scrutiny? What if you are? What if love is worth fighting for? Easy to say, not easy at all. Cameron smiled ruefully. "I almost lost my wife because I was afraid of being vulnerable. Fear makes cowards of us all, Emory. But courage makes us capable of extraordinary things." After Cameron left, Emory walked through Pike Place Market, surrounded by flowers and fresh fish and the kind of vibrant life that made Seattle feel like home. Her phone buzzed. A text from Thaddeus. "I miss you. Whatever I did wrong, I'll fix it. Please don't give up on us." Emory stared at the message for a long time, her heart racing. Then she typed back, "I miss you too. Can we talk?" His response was immediate. When and where? Your choice, she wrote. I'll be there. Tonight. My place. 7 p.m. I'll cook dinner. Emory smiled despite her fears. I thought you said you could cook. I said I taught myself. I never claimed to be good at it. I'll bring wine. Perfect. Tea. For the first time in 3 days, Emory felt like she could breathe again. Maybe Dylan was right. Maybe the rest was just noise. Maybe love was worth fighting for after all. 2 weeks, 14 days since Emory had walked away from Thaddeus Kane at table 7, and she still felt the weight of his disappointment like a stone lodged permanently in her chest. The dinner at his penthouse never happened. She texted him that evening, cancelling with some manufactured excuse about Dylan needing emergency help with medical school applications. They both knew it was a lie wrapped in the thin veneer of politeness that marked the end of something beautiful. Now she stood behind the grease-stained counter at Murphy's Diner in Capitol Hill, pouring endless cups of coffee for truck drivers, night shift workers, and insomniacs seeking refuge in fluorescent-lit solitude. The pay was exactly half what she'd earned at Meridian, but it came without the complication of storm-gray eyes and feelings she couldn't afford to indulge. Her uniform was polyester instead of pristine cotton. Her customers ordered burgers instead of wine pairings, and her tips barely covered bus fare home. But at least she could breathe here without wondering if every interaction was laden with unspoken meanings and impossible desires. The dinner rush was winding down when the door chimed at 10:15 p.m. Emory glanced up from wiping down the sticky counter and felt her world grind to a complete halt. Thaddeus Kane stood in the doorway of Murphy's Diner, looking like a visitor from another planet in his perfectly tailored charcoal suit. The other customers, a cab driver reading yesterday's paper, 2 nurses grabbing coffee between shifts, an elderly man working a crossword puzzle, all turned to stare. A billionaire CEO didn't exactly blend into this working-class neighborhood where people counted change and left dollar tips. Emory's hands shook as she set down the coffee pot, the ceramic clattering against the counter with enough noise to draw Rosa's attention from the cash register. He approached the counter slowly, his grey eyes never leaving her face. The man who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar shipping contracts across 3 continents looked nervous in a way that made her chest tight with recognition. She'd seen this expression before, that first night when he'd asked if he could kiss her under Seattle's October stars. "Hi," he said quietly. "Hi." 1 word each, but they carried the weight of 2 weeks of silence, of conversations that had happened only in her dreams, of explanations that might repair what they'd both broken. "Can we talk?" Emory glanced around the diner with growing awareness of how exposed they were. Rosa was watching with undisguised curiosity from behind the register, her dark eyes darting between them like she was witnessing a telenovela unfold in real time. The cook, Jimmy, was peeking through the service window, spatula frozen mid-flip. Even the late-night regulars had stopped eating to observe this unprecedented drama. "I'm working," she said, gesturing helplessly at the half-clean tables and the coffee that needed brewing. "When do you get off?" "Midnight." "I'll wait." "Thaddeus, you can't sit in a diner for 3 hours. This isn't your kind of place. Watch me." He chose the corner booth, the one with the cracked vinyl seat and the table that wobbled unless you folded a napkin under the left leg. He ordered coffee he didn't drink and a slice of apple pie he didn't touch, and settled in to wait. For 3 hours, he sat there while Emory served other customers, his presence a constant reminder of everything she'd walked away from. The nurses finished their coffee and left with sympathetic glances in Emory's direction. The cab driver paid his check and muttered something about rich folks having too much time on their hands. The elderly man solved his crossword and shuffled out into the Seattle night, leaving Thaddeus as the only customer in the fluorescent-lit diner. Rosa approached Emory during the 11 p.m. lull, her expression a mixture of concern and barely contained excitement. "Mija, who is that man?" "Someone I used to serve at my old job." "Servers don't usually inspire 3-hour vigils," Rosa observed. wiping down the counter with practiced efficiency. "What did you do to him? I broke his heart, and mine." Rosa studied Thaddeus, who was staring out the window at Seattle's late-night traffic with the focused intensity of someone trying to solve the world's problems. "He doesn't look angry." "No," Emory agreed. "He looks sad." At midnight, Rosa practically pushed her toward the door. "Go talk to that man before he buys the whole diner just to get your attention." And Mija, sometimes pride is just fear, wearing a fancy dress. The October night air was crisp with the promise of early winter, carrying the scent of rain and coffee from the late-night shops that kept Capitol Hill alive after dark. Emory wrapped her cardigan tighter around herself, suddenly aware of how different she looked from the polished professional who'd served wine at Meridian. No elegant uniform, no carefully styled hair, just a tired woman in worn jeans and a coffee-stained apron, standing on a sidewalk with the man she loved and couldn't have. "You left Meridian," Thaddeus said. It wasn't a question, more like a statement of fact that he was still trying to process. "Patricia called you. She was concerned. You didn't give notice, didn't answer her calls, didn't collect your final paycheck. I couldn't go back there." Emory's voice was barely above a whisper, competing with the distant sound of traffic and the hum of the diner's neon sign. "I couldn't pretend to serve other customers when all I could think about was Thursday nights at table 7. So you're serving coffee instead of wine, working at a place where the most expensive item on the menu costs $12. I'm working, supporting Dylan, moving forward with my life like I should have been doing all along. Is this moving forward? Working double shifts for half the pay, living on 4 hours of sleep, pretending you're happier serving truckers than discussing terroir with someone who actually listens to your opinions? It's honest work. I never said it wasn't." Thaddeus stepped closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his grey eyes. The way his usually perfect appearance had developed small cracks. His tie was slightly crooked, his hair less than perfectly styled. He looked like a man who hadn't been sleeping well. "But it's not what you want. It's not what you deserve. What I want doesn't matter anymore. It matters to me. It's always mattered to me." The simple statement hung between them like a bridge she was afraid to cross, loaded with implications and possibilities that felt too dangerous to examine. "Thaddeus, why are you here? What could you possibly hope to accomplish by sitting in a diner for 3 hours? Because I have something to tell you, something I should have said 2 weeks ago, and something I should have told you months ago." Emory felt her heart rate accelerate, her chest tightening with equal parts hope and dread. "What? I've been paying Dylan's bills." The words hit her like a bucket of ice water thrown directly in her face, shocking and comprehensive. "What? The textbook costs, the lab fees, his tuition payments, even some of his living expenses. I've been covering them since our second week of serving each other at Meridian." Emory staggered backward, her back hitting the brick wall of the building behind her. "You what?" "I opened an account. Anonymous donations to University of Washington's Financial Aid Office, specifically designated for your brother's educational expenses. Every time you mentioned a financial stress, every time I saw you calculating costs in your head. How could you? Why would you?" "Because I was falling in love with you, and I wanted to remove the obstacles keeping you from pursuing your own dreams, instead of just surviving paycheck to paycheck." Fury rose in her chest, hot and overwhelming and completely justified. "You had no right. I had every right to spend my money however I choose. Not on my family, not without my knowledge, not without my permission." Emory's voice rose, attracting attention from the few late-night pedestrians walking past, but she was beyond caring about public scenes or social propriety. "You went behind my back. You made decisions about my life, my brother's life, my family's financial situation without consulting me for even 1 second. I was trying to help you. You were trying to control me, just like everyone else who thinks money solves everything, who thinks writing a check is the same as actually caring about people." Tears burned her eyes, angry tears that came from a place deeper than just this moment, from 3 years of struggling alone and the humiliation of discovering that her independence had been an illusion. That's not what this was about, isn't it? You decided I was too proud to accept help, so you found a way around my pride. You manipulated the situation to get what you wanted without considering what I needed. What I wanted was to see you happy instead of exhausted. What I wanted was to watch you pursue dreams instead of just working to pay bills. What you wanted was to feel like the generous billionaire solving problems for the poor little server who couldn't handle her own life. The accusation hung between them, ugly and painful, and more honest than either of them wanted to confront. That's not fair, and you know it. Fair. Emory laughed, but there was no humor in it. Only the bitter sound of someone who'd discovered that her entire life had been built on false foundations. Fair would have been asking me first. Fair would have been respecting my choices, even if you disagreed with them. Fair would have been treating me like an equal partner instead of a charity case who needed saving. I have never, not once, treated you like a charity case. Then why did you pay my brother's bills without telling me? Why did you decide that your judgment about my family's needs was more important than my own? Thaddeus was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was raw with honesty that she almost couldn't bear to hear. Because I was afraid you'd say no. Because I was afraid your pride would keep you from accepting help you desperately needed. Because I wanted to be part of your life in whatever way you'd allow, even if it had to be secret. Well, congratulations. Emory's voice was steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks, despite the way her heart was breaking into pieces, so small she might never find them all. You're part of my life now. You're the reason I can never feel truly independent again. Every time Dylan succeeds, every achievement he earns, I'll wonder if it's because of his merit or your money. Emory, you know what the worst part is? I was starting to believe we could work. I was starting to think maybe the differences between us didn't matter if we respected each other enough. They don't matter. The differences are just numbers and circumstances. They do matter. They matter because you think your money gives you the right to make decisions about my life. They matter because you see problems and write checks instead of asking what I actually need. What do you need? Tell me, and I'll do it. Respect, partnership, the right to struggle and succeed on my own terms, even if it takes longer and costs more. And love? Do you need love? The question stopped her cold, cutting through her anger to the vulnerable truth underneath. Yes, she whispered. I need love. But not love that comes with conditions and controls. Not love that makes me dependent on someone else's generosity. I don't want you to be dependent on me. Then why did you pay Dylan's bills behind my back? Why did you take away my choice to handle my own family's problems? Because I love you. And I thought removing financial pressure would give you freedom to make choices based on what you wanted instead of what you had to do. You can't buy your way into my heart, Thaddeus, no matter how good your intentions are. I'm not trying to buy anything. I'm trying to prove that I'm worthy of your love, that I can support your dreams the way you've supported Dylan's. The honesty in his voice nearly broke her resolve. But the betrayal was too fresh, too complete. I would rather lose everything than owe you everything, and I would rather give you everything than lose you to pride and circumstances beyond our control. They stared at each other across the sidewalk, both breathing hard, both aware that everything they'd built was crumbling despite the love they both felt and couldn't deny. I can't do this, Emory said finally. I can't be with someone who thinks he knows what's best for my life better than I do. I can't build a relationship on secrets and decisions made without my input. So what happens now? Now you go back to your world of boardrooms and charity donations, and I stay in mine, where I know the rules and can trust my own choices. That's not what you want. It's what has to happen. Emory turned to walk away, but Thaddeus's voice stopped her. "I love you." She didn't turn around, couldn't bear to see his face when she said the words that would end everything between them. "I love you too. That's exactly why this hurts so much." She walked away then, leaving Thaddeus standing alone under the streetlight outside Murphy's diner, and this time she didn't look back. But his words followed her home. "I love you too." For the first time in 2 weeks, they'd finally said what they both felt, and it changed absolutely nothing. The phone call from Dylan came at 6 a.m. on a Saturday, 3 days after the confrontation outside Murphy's diner. Emory had been lying awake since 4D, staring at the ceiling of her studio apartment and replaying every word of her conversation with Thaddeus for the 100th time. Are you awake?" "I am now." Emory rolled over in bed, squinting at her phone and trying to force alertness into her voice. "Is everything okay? You never call this early unless something's wrong." "Define okay." Dylan's voice was strange, careful in a way that immediately put her nervous system on high alert. "Dylan, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Did something happen at school?" "I got a call from the financial aid office yesterday. Actually, several calls over the past week that I've been trying to figure out how to discuss with you." Emory's stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. "About what? About some anonymous donations that have been covering my educational expenses. Large donations. Like really large donations that have been appearing in my account for weeks." The room felt like it was spinning around her. How large? Enough to cover everything. Tuition, books, lab fees, even some of my living expenses. They said the donations started about 6 weeks ago and have been coming regularly ever since. Emory closed her eyes, the timeline hitting her like a physical blow. 6 weeks ago was exactly when she'd started serving Thaddeus regularly at Meridian, when their relationship had evolved from professional courtesy to something deeper and more complicated. The financial aid office wanted to verify that I knew about the donations, that they weren't some kind of mistake or fraud. They said the donor specifically requested anonymity, but wanted to ensure the money was reaching the intended recipient. "Do you know who's been paying?" Dylan's voice was gentle, like he already suspected the answer and was trying to cushion the impact. "Yes," she whispered. "It's him, isn't it? The guy you fell in love with. Yes." Dylan was quiet for a long moment, and she could picture him in his dorm room, probably sitting at the desk where he studied until midnight every night, processing this information with the same careful analysis he applied to his medical textbooks. "Emory, can I ask you something?" "Of course, you can ask me anything." "Are you angry because he helped or because he didn't ask permission first?" The question cut straight to the heart of her conflict, forcing her to examine feelings she'd been avoiding for 3 days. "Both," she admitted. "I'm angry about both things, but maybe more about the second one." "Would you have said yes if he'd asked?" Emory thought about it honestly, imagining Thaddeus approaching her 6 weeks ago with an offer to pay Dylan's expenses. 2 months ago, when Dylan was stressed about textbook costs and she was working herself into exhaustion, trying to balance 2 jobs. "No," she said finally, I would have been insulted and proud and completely refused, so he was right to think you'd turn down help. That doesn't give him the right to make decisions about our family without involving us. Doesn't it give him the right to spend his own money however he wants? Dylan, whose side are you on here? I'm on your side, always. I'm on the side of my brilliant, stubborn, self-sacrificing sister who taught me everything I know about love and loyalty." Dylan's voice grew serious, taking on the tone he used when he was about to say something important. "But I need to tell you something about this situation that you might not have considered." "What? This man's help? It's changing my life in ways that go beyond just money. Because of those donations, I've been able to focus on studying instead of working 20 hours a week in the campus lab. I can apply for competitive research programs without worrying about whether I can afford the application fees. I'm going to graduate debt-free, which means I can choose my residency based on where I want to learn, not where I can afford to live. Dylan, I'm going to be a doctor because someone believed in that dream enough to invest in it. And yeah, maybe he should have asked permission first. Maybe he should have been more transparent about his help. But maybe sometimes love means taking risks to help the people you care about, even when you can't guarantee they'll appreciate the gesture. Emory felt tears threatening, the familiar burn behind her eyes that came whenever Dylan got philosophical about life and love. When did you get so wise about relationships? You're 19 years old, when my sister spent 3 years sacrificing everything for my education and showing me what real love looks like. I learned about putting other people first by watching you, Em. Dylan's voice was gentle but firm. You taught me that love means putting someone else's happiness before your own comfort. Isn't that exactly what he did? It's different when it's romantic love. There are different rules, different expectations. Is it different? Or are you just scared because this time someone's putting your happiness first instead of you taking care of everyone else? The question hung in the air like a challenge, forcing her to confront truths she'd been avoiding. Em, do you love him? More than I've ever loved anyone in my life. Does he make you happy when you're together? When I let him, yes. When I'm not overthinking every gesture and analyzing every conversation for hidden meanings. Does he respect you as a person? Your intelligence, your choices, your independence? Emory thought about their conversations at Meridian. The way Thaddeus listened to her opinions about wine and food, valued her insights, encouraged her dreams about traveling and writing. Yes, she said quietly, he does respect me. Does he treat you like an equal when you're together? Yes. That's part of what made this betrayal so painful. When we're talking, when we're sharing ideas, I never feel like the poor girl being patronized by the rich man. I feel like his intellectual equal. Then maybe the real question isn't whether he should have asked permission to help our family. Maybe the question is whether you're brave enough to let someone love you the way you've been loving me all these years. What do you mean, Emma? You've been giving and sacrificing and taking care of everyone else for so long. I don't think you know how to receive care in return. You're so used to being the strong one, the responsible one, the one who handles everything alone, that accepting help feels like admitting weakness. I don't want to be weak. Letting someone love you isn't weak. It's the bravest thing you can do. After hanging up, Emory sat in her small apartment, staring out at Seattle's Saturday morning bustle, while Dylan's words echoed in her mind. For 3 years, she'd defined herself by her independence, her ability to handle everything alone. The idea of accepting help, especially financial help, felt like admitting failure, like proving that she couldn't manage her own life. But what if Dylan was right? What if love meant allowing someone to care about your struggles without viewing their help as an attack on your competence? What if she'd been so afraid of appearing weak that she'd thrown away something beautiful and real and worth fighting for? Her phone buzzed with a text from Jessamine. Girl, you need to see the news. Check Seattle Business Journal online, now. Emory opened her laptop with shaking hands, her heart rate accelerating as the webpage loaded. The headline made her heart stop completely. Kane Global CEO announces major philanthropic initiative, Sinclair Family Foundation to support medical education. The article was dated yesterday, Friday afternoon. Thaddeus Kane, CEO of Kane Global Logistics, announced plans to establish the Sinclair Family Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting families navigating the financial challenges of medical education. The foundation will provide grants, scholarships, and emergency assistance to students pursuing careers in healthcare, while also supporting family members who sacrifice their own educational and professional opportunities to make those medical dreams possible. Emory's hands trembled as she continued reading. Too many brilliant students abandon medical school due to financial pressure. Kane stated during a press conference at his downtown Seattle headquarters. Too many families sacrifice everything to support one person's education, with siblings and parents putting their own dreams on indefinite hold. This foundation will ensure that financial barriers don't prevent the next generation of doctors from serving our communities, and that supporting families don't have to choose between their own aspirations and their loved ones' success. Kane declined to specify the foundation's funding source, but confirmed that the initial endowment will exceed $50 million, making it one of the largest private medical education initiatives in the Pacific Northwest. The foundation will begin accepting applications in January, with the first scholarships awarded for the following academic year. Priority will be given to students from families where other members have made significant personal sacrifices to support medical education goals. Emory stared at the screen, tears blurring her vision as the implications sank in. He'd created a foundation named after her family, designed to help people exactly like Dylan and her. And he'd done it not to manipulate her or prove a point, but because their story had inspired him to help others facing the same impossible choices. Her phone rang. Cameron Torres. Emory, I hope you don't mind me calling. Cameron, did you see the news about the foundation? Yeah, he's been working on this for weeks, actually. Since before your fight outside the diner. I don't understand. He fell in love with someone who understood what it meant to sacrifice for family. So he decided to make sure other families wouldn't have to make the same impossible choices. But the name was his idea from the beginning. He said you taught him that love isn't about solving someone's problems for them. It's about honoring their strength and creating opportunities for others to show the same strength. Emory was crying now, really crying. Cameron, how is he doing? Miserable. Working 18-hour days to avoid thinking about you. Sleeping in his office most nights. He's convinced he's lost you forever and that it's entirely his fault. Has he lost me? Cameron was quiet for a moment. That depends. Are you brave enough to fight for love? Or are you going to let pride keep you from the best thing that's ever happened to either of you? I don't know how to fix this. I said terrible things to him. He said some pretty terrible things too. But people who love each other find ways to forgive terrible things when they're said from fear instead of malice. What should I do? What does your heart tell you to do? My heart tells me to run to him and apologize and beg him to try again. Then maybe you should listen to your heart instead of your pride. After hanging up, Emory made a decision that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. She called Murphy's Diner and quit, effective immediately. Then she called Meridian. Patricia, it's Emory Sinclair. Is my position still available? Miss Sinclair? Patricia's voice was professionally cool but not entirely unfriendly. That depends on several factors. Are you prepared to provide reliable, consistent service without personal drama affecting your professional performance? I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to fix the biggest mistake of my life. In that case, you can start tonight. We have a private event scheduled. Very exclusive client, very particular requirements. What kind of event? The kind where second chances are possible if you're brave enough to take them. Miss Sinclair? Yes. Wear your best uniform. Tonight matters. The entire Meridian restaurant had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. Every table had been removed except one, table 7, which was set for 2 with pristine white linens, gleaming silver service, and elaborate arrangements of white roses and baby's breath. Dozens of candles flickered throughout the empty dining room, casting dancing shadows on the walls and creating an atmosphere of intimate elegance that took Emory's breath away. She stood in the doorway, wearing her perfectly pressed Meridian uniform, heart pounding so hard she could hear it over the soft classical music playing from hidden speakers. Patricia appeared beside her, elegant and professional as always, but with a barely concealed smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Your table tonight, Miss Sinclair? Just one table? Just one customer? Just one guest? He's requested you specifically, and he's paid for exclusive use of the entire restaurant for the evening." Patricia's expression grew more serious. "Miss Sinclair, whatever happened between you and Mr. Kane, I want you to know that your position here has always been based on your merit, not on any external relationship. You're an exceptional server, and Meridian is better for having you on staff. Thank you, Patricia. That means more than you know." However, Patricia continued with a knowing look, sometimes exceptional people deserve exceptional gestures. Thaddeus was already seated when she approached table 7, wearing the same charcoal suit he'd worn that first Thursday night 6 weeks ago. But his expression was entirely different now, vulnerable, hopeful, and terrified all at once, like a man who was risking everything on a single moment. "Good evening, Emory. Good evening, Thaddeus." They looked at each other across the familiar distance of table 7, both aware that everything between them had led to this moment, that their entire relationship had been building toward this conversation. "Would you like to hear about this evening's special presentation?" he asked, his voice formal, but his eyes warm with barely contained emotion. "I would very much like to hear about it." Thaddeus reached into his jacket and pulled out a leather portfolio, placing it carefully on the table between them like an offering. "Tonight, I'd like to present a business proposal, a partnership opportunity that I hope you'll consider." "A business proposal?" "Yes, for an equal partnership in something that matters, something that could help families like yours, like ours, like thousands of others who face impossible choices between love and financial survival." Emory's hands shook as she opened the portfolio, her eyes scanning legal documents, financial projections, and architectural plans that looked official and comprehensive and absolutely real. "The Sinclair Family Foundation," she read aloud, her voice barely above a whisper, "named after the woman who taught me that true strength isn't about solving problems alone. It's about recognizing when we're stronger together, when two people can accomplish more than either could achieve individually." Thaddeus stood up, moving around the table to stand beside her chair, close enough that she could smell his familiar cologne and feel the nervous energy radiating from his body. "Emory Sinclair, I'm formally offering you the position of Executive Director of the Sinclair Family Foundation. Full decision-making authority, competitive salary, complete autonomy in program development and implementation." She looked up at him, tears already streaming down her face. "Thaddeus, the foundation would support families like yours, students like Dylan, people who understand that love sometimes means sacrifice, but who shouldn't have to choose between supporting family and pursuing their own dreams. The mission statement is beautiful. You would design the programs. You would choose the scholarship recipients. You would decide how the money gets distributed, what criteria matter most, which families need help. I would provide funding and support, but the foundation would be yours to run according to your vision. Why? Why would you offer me this? Because I don't want to save you, Emory. I want to build something meaningful with you. I want us to be partners in something bigger than either of our individual lives." She stood up, the portfolio falling to the floor as she stepped into his arms, feeling like she was finally coming home after weeks of wandering, lost in her own pride and fear. "I'm sorry," she whispered against his chest, breathing in the scent of him and feeling safe for the first time in weeks. "I'm so sorry I walked away. I'm sorry I said those horrible things about your motives. I'm sorry I made decisions about your life without including you. I'm sorry I thought I knew what was best for you, better than you did." They held each other in the candlelit restaurant, both crying and laughing simultaneously, both aware that they were being given a second chance that many people never get. Thaddeus pulled back to look at her face, his hands gentle on her cheeks. There's one more thing, one more question I need to ask you. What? He dropped to one knee beside table 7, pulling a simple solitaire ring from his pocket. The diamond caught the candlelight, throwing tiny rainbows across the white tablecloth. Emory Sinclair, will you marry me? Not because I can take care of you, but because we can take care of each other. Not because I can solve your problems, but because we can solve the world's problems together. Not because you need saving, but because I need you as my equal partner in everything that matters. Yes, she whispered, then louder, her voice carrying across the empty restaurant. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit. Simple and elegant and exactly right for someone who valued substance over show. When he stood up, she threw her arms around his neck and kissed him with everything she felt. Joy, relief, love so overwhelming it felt like drowning and flying and coming alive all at once. I love you, she said against his lips. I love you too, so much that I'm willing to share you with the foundation and all the families we're going to help together. Patricia appeared from the kitchen, carrying champagne and wearing a smile Emory had never seen before, maternal and proud and genuinely happy. Congratulations, Miss Sinclair, Mr. Kane. Thank you, Patricia, for everything. Your first official act as executive director. Patricia handed her a glass of champagne. What do you mean? Tomorrow, we announce the Foundation's first scholarship recipients, 20 students, full educational coverage, including support stipends for their families. Emory looked at Thaddeus, then at Patricia, then at the engagement ring sparkling on her finger. I quit Murphy's Diner this morning, she said. Good, Thaddeus replied, his arm tightening around her waist. Because you have much more important work to do now. We have more important work to do. We're partners now. They drank champagne in the empty restaurant where they'd fallen in love, making plans for a foundation that would honor both their families' sacrifices and their shared commitment to helping others avoid impossible choices. The conversation flowed like wine, covering details both practical and deeply personal. The foundation would start with medical education, but expand to support other fields where family sacrifice was common. They'd create mentorship programs, family support groups, even emergency assistance funds for unexpected crises. When they finally left Meridian that night, walking hand in hand into Seattle's October evening, they weren't the same people who'd met at table 7 6 weeks ago. They were partners, equals. Two people who'd learned that love wasn't about rescuing each other, it was about building something beautiful and meaningful together. And they had a lifetime to build it. 1 year later, Thursday evening at Meridian felt like coming home. Emory adjusted the delicate gold bracelet Thaddeus had given her for their 6-month engagement anniversary, its tiny diamond catching the restaurant's warm lighting as she approached their table. Table 7 had become theirs in the most official way possible. A small brass plaque now marked it as reserved for Kane every Thursday at 7 p.m. But everything else had changed. She no longer wore a server's uniform. Tonight, she was dressed in a navy blue dress that she'd chosen herself, paid for with her own salary as executive director of the Sinclair Family Foundation. Her engagement ring sparkled beside the bracelet. But more importantly, she wore the confident smile of someone who'd found her calling. Darling, you're glowing, Thaddeus said as she settled into the chair across from him. The foundation meeting went well. Emory's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm that still made his heart skip beats. We awarded our 100th scholarship today. Maria Santos, a single mother from Tacoma, pursuing nursing school while raising 3 kids. Her story reminded me so much of our early conversations about sacrifice and dreams. Tell me everything. She launched into the details while he listened with the same focused attention he'd shown her during those first weeks of wine service. The foundation had exceeded every projection they'd made. What had started as a $50 million endowment had grown to nearly $80 million as other donors joined their mission. The ripple effect has been incredible, Emory continued, accepting the glass of burgundy Thaddeus had already ordered for her. We're not just supporting students anymore. We're helping entire families reimagine what's possible, like the Hernandez family. Exactly. When we covered Elena's medical school tuition, her younger brother was able to stay in his engineering program instead of dropping out to work. Her mother could reduce her hours and finally finish her teaching certificate. One scholarship helped 3 people pursue their dreams. Thaddeus reached across the table to touch her hand. You've built something extraordinary. We've built something extraordinary, Emory corrected gently. Your business connections opened doors I never could have reached alone. True partnership, he agreed. Though I have to say, watching you present to the Boeing Foundation last month was remarkable. You commanded that boardroom like you were born to it. I was terrified. You were magnificent. Their server approached, Jessica, who'd started at Meridian 3 months ago and reminded Emory of herself a year earlier. Eager, professional, slightly intimidated by the elegance surrounding her. Good evening, Mr. Kane, Miss Sinclair. Are you ready to hear about tonight's specials? Emory smiled. We'll start with the butternut squash soup and the seared duck breast. And Jessica, that's Dr. Sinclair-to-be. The wedding is in 5 months. Jessica's eyes widened slightly. Congratulations. The whole staff has been following your story. You're kind of legendary around here. After Jessica left, Thaddeus raised his wine glass. To legendary women who change everything they touch, to partners who make everything possible, Emory countered. They drank to their reflection in the window, Seattle's November skyline twinkling behind them. The view included the Pike Place Market, where Cameron had convinced her to fight for love. The Capitol Hill neighborhood, where Murphy's Diner still served coffee to night shift workers, and the downtown towers, where Kane Global Logistics continued to thrive under Thaddeus's increasingly collaborative leadership style. Speaking of legendary, Emory said, Dylan called this afternoon. He got his acceptance letter from Johns Hopkins Medical School. Thaddeus's face broke into a genuine grin. Their top program, full scholarship, plus a research assistant position that covers living expenses. He'll be studying under Dr. Patricia Chen, one of the leading cardiac surgeons in the country. He's earned every bit of that success. The pride in Thaddeus's voice was unmistakable. Over the past year, he'd developed a protective older brother relationship with Dylan that touched Emory's heart. They discussed medical ethics during family dinners, debated healthcare policy reforms, and bonded over their shared love of complex problem-solving. Dylan wants to specialize in pediatric cardiology, Emory continued. He said our foundation inspired him to focus on areas where he can help families facing impossible medical decisions. Smart young man, takes after his sister. Actually, he's bringing someone to the wedding. A fellow pre-med student named Sarah. I think it's serious. Good for him. Everyone deserves the kind of happiness we've found. The soup arrived, rich and perfectly seasoned, accompanied by warm bread that reminded Emory of their first real conversation about dreams and sacrifices. She'd learned to savor these quiet moments together, no longer rushing through dinners, worried about other customers or financial pressures. How was your day? She asked. The quarterly board meeting? Productive. We approved the new sustainability initiatives that Cameron proposed. Kane Global will be carbon neutral within 3 years. Your father would be proud of what you've built. Thaddeus considered this. I think he'd be more proud of who I've become, running a company with heart instead of just profit margins. Their relationship had softened him in ways that surprised everyone who knew him professionally. Where he'd once been coldly efficient, he now led with empathy. Where he'd once made unilateral decisions, he now sought input and built consensus. The transformation went both ways. Emory had discovered her own leadership abilities through the foundation, learning to navigate corporate politics and high-stakes negotiations with a natural grace that impressed seasoned executives. "Oh, I almost forgot," Thaddeus said, pulling a folder from his briefcase. The wedding venue sent the final floor plans. Emory opened the folder to reveal elegant drawings of the Seattle Art Museum's main hall, transformed for their May ceremony. They'd chosen the location specifically because it honored both their aesthetic preferences and their shared commitment to supporting arts education. The layout looks perfect, small enough to feel intimate, grand enough to accommodate everyone important to us, including the entire Meridian staff, Thaddeus added with amusement. Patricia insisted that excluding any of them would be personally offensive. "I love that we're including them. This restaurant is where our story began, where our story changed direction," he corrected. "I think our story actually began the moment you refused to apologize for a perfectly set table." Emory laughed, remembering that first confrontation. "I was so determined not to be intimidated by you. You succeeded completely. I was fascinated by someone who saw through the CEO facade to the person underneath. Were you lonely before we met?" The question was quietly asked, but it cut to something they'd never fully discussed. "Profoundly lonely," Thaddeus admitted. "I had business associates, professional relationships, people who wanted things from me, but no one who wanted to know what I thought about books or dreams, or what made me laugh. I understand that feeling. Do you? Even with Dylan and your close relationship, different kind of loneliness. I had someone to care for, but no one caring for me in return. No one asking about my dreams or worries or what I needed. We were both incomplete. And now? Now I can't imagine facing any day without knowing you'll be part of it." The main course arrived as the evening crowd began to thin. Duck breast cooked to perfection, accompanied by seasonal vegetables that showcased the chef's artistry. They ate slowly, savoring both the food and the conversation. "I had lunch with Vivian yesterday," Thaddeus said casually. Emory's fork paused midway to her mouth. "Oh," she wanted to apologize. "In person, properly, for interfering with our relationship last year. How did that go?" "Better than expected. She's seeing someone new. A professor at Seattle University. Seems genuinely happy for the first time since I've known her. I'm glad. I never wanted her to be miserable, just away from us. She actually offered to help with the foundation. Her marketing expertise could be valuable for our awareness campaigns." Emory considered this. "If you trust her motives, I'm open to the idea. People deserve second chances when they've learned from their mistakes. Very generous of you. I learned generosity from someone who paid my brother's medical school bills without expecting gratitude or recognition." "That was self-interest," Thaddeus protested. "I wanted you to be happy. Same thing in the end." They finished dinner as the restaurant prepared for closing, their conversation flowing from wedding details to foundation plans to dreams for their shared future. These Thursday dinners had become sacred time, protected from work emergencies and social obligations. Patricia approached their table as they lingered over coffee and shared tiramisu. "Mr. Kane, Miss Sinclair, I wanted to personally thank you both for the Foundation's scholarship program for hospitality workers. 3 of our staff members have been accepted to culinary school because of your support." "That's exactly what we hoped would happen," Emory replied, "creating opportunities for people to pursue their passions." Jessica, their server, appeared with their check and a shy smile. "Miss Sinclair, could I ask you something?" "Of course. I'm thinking about applying for one of your scholarships. I want to study food science, maybe work in sustainable agriculture someday." Emory's heart warmed. "Applications open in January. You should definitely apply." After Jessica left, Thaddeus handed Emory the check with a familiar grin. "Your turn to leave the tip." This had become their tradition. They alternated who paid, who chose the wine, who decided whether to linger or leave early. Equal partnership in everything, even restaurant bills. Emory calculated 25% and added extra for the foundation scholarship mention. As they prepared to leave, she looked around the dining room where they'd fallen in love. "Do you ever think about our first conversation here?" she asked. "Every Thursday." Thaddeus helped her with her coat. "I think about how terrified I was that you'd see through my defenses. And now I hope you see through everything. I never want to hide from you again." They walked out into Seattle's November evening, the city lights reflecting off puddles from earlier rain. Thaddeus's penthouse was a 15-minute walk through downtown, a route they'd traveled dozens of times while planning their life together. The penthouse had changed too. Where it had once been all sharp lines and expensive emptiness, it now showed evidence of shared living. Emory's books about sustainable agriculture crowded the shelves beside Thaddeus's economic theory volumes. Her plants lined the windows, bringing life to spaces that had once felt more like a hotel than a home. "Wine?" Thaddeus asked, moving toward the kitchen. "Please, something celebratory. We should toast Dylan's acceptance letter properly." He returned with a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. Settling beside her on the couch that faced floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. "To Dylan," he said, raising his glass. "To brilliant young doctors who will change the world. To second chances," Emory added, "to love that's worth fighting for, to partnerships that make us better than we were alone." They drank and watched Seattle's lights twinkle across the water, comfortable in the silence that came from truly knowing each other. "I have something for you," Thaddeus said eventually, reaching into his briefcase. "It's not my birthday. Better than a birthday." He handed her a thick envelope. "Open it. Inside were architectural drawings and legal documents." Emory studied them with growing amazement. "A house? Our house. If you approve of the design." The plans showed a beautiful craftsman-style home in Queen Anne, with large windows, a gourmet kitchen, and a home office space perfect for foundation work. "Thaddeus, it's gorgeous. But we haven't even talked about where we want to live after the wedding. We've talked about wanting a garden for your herbs. We've discussed needing space for a home office. We've mentioned wanting a guest room for Dylan when he visits. This has all of that. Plus a wine cellar, a library, and enough space to host foundation events." Emory traced the floor plan with her finger, imagining their life in these rooms. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since our engagement, but I didn't want to present it as a fait accompli. The lot is purchased, but construction won't begin until you approve every detail. Equal partnership in choosing our home, equal partnership in everything." She kissed him then, tasting champagne and promise and the future they were building together. "Show me the kitchen again," she said. "I want to imagine cooking Sunday dinners for Dylan and Sarah and all our friends." They spent the next hour reviewing every room, discussing modifications and improvements. By the time they finished, it felt like their home, not just a house Thaddeus had designed. "There's one more thing," he said as they prepared for bed. "Cameron called today. He and Rebecca are expecting their first baby. That's wonderful. When June? He asked if I'd be the godfather. You'll be amazing at that. He also asked if we'd consider being the backup guardians, in case anything ever happened to both of them." Emory stopped brushing her hair. "That's a significant responsibility." "It is. But I can't think of 2 people I'd rather trust with raising a child who understood the importance of love and sacrifice and building something meaningful." She considered this. "We'd be good at it. Raising children who understand that strength comes from caring about others. Does that mean you want children? Our own children, someday?" The question hung between them, important and intimate. "Yes," Emory said softly. "I want to raise children with you. I want to teach them about wine and books and the importance of helping others pursue their dreams." "How many children? 2 or 3? Enough to fill that house with laughter and chaos and love." They fell asleep that night planning baby names and discussing educational philosophies, two people who'd found their way to each other despite every obstacle. The next morning brought the familiar rhythm of their shared life. Coffee brewed while they read the news together, discussing local politics and global events with the easy intimacy of people who trusted each other's opinions. Emory's phone rang at 8 a.m. Dylan, calling from Baltimore, where he was visiting Johns Hopkins before officially accepting their offer. You're not going to believe this. Tell me, I met with Dr. Chen yesterday, the surgeon I'll be working with. She knows about the Sinclair Family Foundation. Of course she does. We're getting national recognition now. She wants to partner with you. Create a specific program for medical students pursuing pediatric specialties. That's incredible, Dylan. Did you tell her I'd be interested? I told her my sister doesn't just fund dreams. She makes them bigger than anyone imagined. After hanging up, Emory shared the news with Thaddeus while he knotted his tie for another day of board meetings and strategic planning. Johns Hopkins partnership would put us on the map nationally, he observed. Are you ready for that level of visibility? I'm ready for anything that helps more families avoid the choices we had to make. Our foundation, she agreed. They kissed goodbye in the elevator, heading to separate offices where they'd spend the day building different aspects of their shared mission. The foundation had grown beyond anything they'd initially envisioned, but their partnership had grown too. That evening, Emory worked late in her foundation office, reviewing scholarship applications from across the country. Each story reminded her of her own struggles, her own dreams deferred for family responsibilities. Her assistant, Marcus, knocked on her door at 7 p.m. Miss Sinclair, your fiancé is here with dinner. Thaddeus appeared carrying takeout from their favorite Thai restaurant and a bottle of wine. You missed dinner, he said, setting containers on her desk. So dinner came to you. You didn't have to do this. Partners take care of each other. They ate pad thai and green curry while reviewing the day's accomplishments. The foundation had approved 15 new scholarships. Kane Global had signed a major sustainability contract, and their wedding planner had confirmed that everything was on schedule for their May ceremony. 5 months, Emory mused. 5 months until we're officially married. Nervous, excited, ready to start the next chapter. What do you think that chapter will look like? Emory considered the question while twirling noodles around her fork. I think it looks like Sunday dinners with Dylan and Sarah, foundation galas where we celebrate other families' successes, traveling to wine regions together and writing about sustainable farming practices, building that house and filling it with friends and laughter and maybe a few children who understand that love means making the world better. Sounds perfect. What about you? What do you want our marriage to look like? I want to wake up every morning knowing that I'm partnered with someone who challenges me to be better. I want to solve problems together and celebrate victories together and never go to bed angry. We've gotten good at not going to bed angry. Practice makes perfect. They finished dinner as the Seattle skyline darkened outside her office windows. 10 months ago, Emory had been serving wine to strangers and worrying about Dylan's textbook costs. Now she was running a national foundation and planning a wedding to the man who'd seen past her professional mask to the dreams underneath. Ready to go home? Thaddeus asked, clearing away the empty containers. Home. The word felt perfect when it meant wherever they were together. As they walked through downtown Seattle toward his penthouse, Emory reflected on how much their Thursday evening tradition had evolved. What had started as formal service interactions had become the foundation of their relationship. Proof that love could grow in the most unexpected places. Tomorrow was Friday, which meant foundation board meetings and wedding dress fittings and a dozen other details that filled their busy lives. But tonight was theirs, and they had a lifetime of nights ahead. At home, they sat on their couch overlooking Elliott Bay, sharing a glass of wine and making plans for a future that stretched beyond anything either had imagined alone. I love our life, Emory said, curled against Thaddeus's shoulder. "I love our life too, but mostly, I love how we built it together." Outside their windows, Seattle sparkled with possibility, a city where a server and a CEO had learned that love wasn't about rescuing each other. It was about creating something beautiful together, and they had created something beautiful. A foundation that helped families pursue their dreams, a relationship built on equal partnership, and a future filled with infinite possibility. Every Thursday at exactly 7 p.m., they would return to Table 7 at Meridian, not as customer and server, but as partners who had found their way to love through conversation, respect, and the courage to believe that different worlds could become one shared dream. And they lived happily, purposefully, passionately ever after. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.